is Victoria Tippins. I am a mother of 3, a one-on-one birth coach, and a birth attendant of 15 years. And I support families in creating peaceful birth experiences. And it all starts with number 1, cultivating your internal environment. So your internal environment is basically your relationship to yourself, your orientation around birth, your fears, your desires, your preferences, your relationship to pain, your relationship to relaxation, and the tools and the pathways that you have developed within yourself to cope, to relax, and to feel safe, to feel in control in an experience where we don't have a lot of control. So your inner environment is so important because normal physiology works really, really well, but we get in the way all the time because we have not invested throughout our pregnancy, perhaps, in creating the internal environment that gives us what we need to be able to get out of the way and let physiology take over. And so this is the problem with the Western approach to birth education, where you wait until the 3rd trimester and then you take like a week-long hospital birth class and like learn bits and pieces of information from social media and feel like you kind of have to piece together all these different parts of birth. Piecing together free information online is actually increasing your birth anxiety, and I'm going to explain why. Number 1, you've probably read all the books, right? And you've listened to podcasts and probably saved 100 different Instagram posts on your, like in your saved folder, right? On like various labor tips. But instead of feeling ready, you probably feel overwhelmed. And this is because you're focusing your attention entirely on isolated tips, bouncing from topic to topic to topic and trying to piece everything together on your own. And what this usually leads to is people going into birth hoping for the best, which is number 2. A lot of moms go into birth and they're like, okay, I hope everything works out. And that's okay. But I have found that a much better approach is to go into birth feeling like, I've got this. I'm ready. I'm excited to meet my baby. I know that I have done everything I can to increase the likelihood of having the kind of birth that I want to have. Like I've checked off all of those boxes fully and I'm confident in that. Piecing together little bits of advice, that leads to decision fatigue on top of pregnancy brain. And it leaves you second guessing yourself right when you should be confidently resting in your power. So everyone seems to think that knowledge is key. And this is why I'm illustrating this is so that you can really see the importance of the internal preparation, because knowledge is really only one piece of the puzzle. With my first, I had been a doula for 9 years. So I had a lot of education, all the education of a doula of 9 years. And even though I was doing all the right things to prevent tearing, I had a midwife, I was in the water, I was in the right position, I still got a bad tear. And that is because my internal environment, if that makes sense, like how I was feeling in there, was not set up to support me in feeling safe to release control and surrender and allow my baby to come out slowly. Instead, as my baby was going through that 2 steps forward, 1 step back motion, I felt that pressure build and I totally freaked out and I was like, get the baby out! And I just added extra force and I pushed my baby out too quickly. And that is why I tore. The reason why I want to illustrate that story is because that's just a great example of you can have a lot of knowledge and still don't have the internal preparation and internal environment to feel safe in the presence of releasing control, in the presence of pressure, and in the presence of birth in itself, having contractions back to back, being in an experience where we can't just like turn off. So we need to have the internal preparation to be able to support that as well. And I do want to say that my first birth was actually pain-free for all of active labor. I had this really strong internal preparation around contractions. And by the time that I went into labor, I was like, I can do this, like bring it on. I cannot wait for the contractions. Like I can't wait to meet my baby. And from that place, I felt so prepared and so knowledgeable, so internally prepared. And I just had like a pain-free experience with my contractions. But when I got to the point where I was pushing and I felt all that pressure, that's where I had fear. And that's where I didn't have any kind of somatic or nervous system preparation or any kind of integrated tool to help me feel safe. So we need knowledge. We also need personalized support in integrating that knowledge, applying that knowledge to our situation, and organizing all the things that we've learned in a way that makes it actually like applicable, something that we can do, not just know. Because when you're in labor, your thinking brain turns off. So a lot of the things that you learn, if you're just focusing on like putting facts in your brain, that only can take you so far. We need to learn how to release tension in our body, build relationships to our nervous system, and so on. So we all have different fears and we all have different triggers and different preferences for birth. So that's why personalized support helps you, because it can help you identify those fears, whether it's a fear of advocacy with your partner, a fear of losing control, medical trauma, past challenges that were really scary, like with, doctors or things like that. All of that can come up with birth. So a customized support plan around how we're going to navigate that, how we're going to address fears in our body when they come up, and building those tools and relationships is really what supports more positive birth experiences. I've been supporting families for 15 years. And at this point, I've supported hundreds personally through pregnancy, birth, and postpartum as a doula and student midwife and educator. And so throughout this time, I've developed frameworks for coping with fear, overcoming it, and helping you regulate your nervous system. So if something comes up that is triggering, to help you support you in maintaining a calm internal environment no matter what comes up, we need to have that preparation and we need to have those tools. Especially if you're planning to birth in a system of care that might have an orientation around fear or non-evidence-based interventions. So in this external environment, we need to advocate to make decisions maybe a little bit more, because maybe we don't want to make choices from fear. Maybe we don't want to make choices that align with a non-evidence-based policy that doesn't really feel like the right choice for us. And so it's important that we know how to do that, how to navigate a system of care that isn't totally evidence-based sometimes, or that can have some fear kind of bringing up right into the space. And this just really depends on your provider, but it's very common for moms to birth in a system of care that has some policies that aren't evidence-based that we kind of have to navigate a little bit, or birthing in an environment where informed consent isn't really the way that providers just generally support birth. It might be a little bit more like, hey, we think that your labor's taking a while, time to get Pitocin, right? It's like, wait a second, I'm a person, let's have a conversation about this. How to actually do that in the environment is important. But we can't apply, if you could learn about all the different interventions and stuff, you can't apply that to the moment. You can't have those conversations if you don't have the internal trust in yourself, if you don't have the safety in yourself, if you don't have the tools to make sure you're choosing from love rather than choosing from fear. All of that is important, because when we have triggers or fears come up and we don't know how to navigate it, we can just shut down in our nervous system and be like, sure, whatever the doctor says. And sometimes whatever the doctor says is the right choice. And sometimes it's not. And even if it is, moms feel more empowered in the choices that they make when they're making a choice with their provider in collaboration, even if they're being recommended a C-section and the mom really doesn't want one, but realizes that is the right choice for me. If she's making that choice, instead of feeling like I have to do this and there's no other option and you're telling me what to do and it feels really traumatic. Instead, if it's like a conversation, you have support to work through your emotions, and you are part of the decision-making process, that will leave a mom walking away from her birth feeling so much more positive about the experience, because she knew how to be collaborative, she knew how to support herself emotionally and navigating anything that can come up, right? So one piece to the internal environment is releasing control. No amount of generic birth prep, the birth class at the hospital, the perineal massage, the birth ball, the dates, will actually target what you need to have a great birth, because what you need to cultivate within yourself to have a great birth is some kind of capacity to feel safe in releasing control. Like I said before, normal physiology works very, very well. We just get in the way all the time with our own need to control or fear or tension. And the easiest way to do that, to get in the way, is by bringing in familiar patterns of control. And a lot of moms are, probably not all of you here are people that are type A, need to control. I'm very type A and I really need to control. So this is something that's really big for me each time I have a baby, because when we go into birth trying to control, we ultimately create resistance. You already believe that your body was made to do this, but probably you have not developed relationships with those parts of yourself that want to be in control. So it's one thing to have in our beliefs, I know my body was made to do this. I know that we have been birthing for thousands of years and my life is proof that birth works really well. I believe that. That's great. We want to look at our beliefs when we're preparing emotionally, but we also want to look at our relationships with these different aspects of birth. And one of them is releasing control. And this is a really big one, a really challenging one for a lot of moms. But there are ways to create the somatic pathway to feel safe when needed, right? During birth, in the presence of vulnerability, in the presence of releasing control. And this is exactly why 96% of my private coaching clients who want an unmedicated birth have one, because when their thinking brain turns off and everything goes out the window, the dates in the birth plan or the birth ball or any of that kind of more generic birth prep isn't going to catch you, but weeks or months of nervous system preparation will. So we can go into birth feeling confident and prepared, because outcomes are so much better when we go into birth feeling confident and prepared, and we know how to advocate. We know how to make individualized choices in alignment with our preferences, instead of just being told what to do or feeling coerced into doing things that maybe we don't want to do, or feeling overwhelmed by our own internal struggles with resistance, with tension, with needing to control and shutting down. So today, to begin the rest of our training, I'm going to go through one of my favorite tools that I use in my coaching program for creating the inner environment. And so this is called the birth intention meditation. And it's really the foundation for birth preparation and creating the internal environment of confidence and calm. So this is something that I love to guide all my moms to do. It supports you in getting clear on what it is that you really want for your birth in a feeling in your body. This isn't I want an unmedicated birth. I want a low intervention birth. I want this or that. This is about discovering what you want for your birth in a feeling. How do you want to feel when you're going through the birth experience? So we can't control what comes up for us, right? We can't control if we have fear or anxiety or anything like that. We can't control that, but we can control where we put our attention. Always. There is something really beautiful about using your attention throughout pregnancy to practice strengthening a pathway to getting you back in touch with the feeling of what it is that you want to experience for your birth, by practicing bringing your attention again and again and again to this place of feeling. This is your foundational framework for everything that we do going forward. We first want to know, what is it that you're walking towards? What is it that you're wanting for your birth? Are you wanting to have a joyful experience where there's laughter in the room and there's silly music playing and it just feels so silly and funny and lighthearted and you're relaxing into this joy and laughter? Or are you more like me and you're I want everyone to be quiet. I want it to be reverent, like a ceremony. I want to be left alone and just be in the silence and reverence and permission to just trust my body. I want to feel that during my birth. We want to look at the feeling. It is very possible that your birth might not unfold exactly how you imagine it or in the exact ways that you want. It also is possible that it does. But when we can return our birth intention to a feeling in our body, rather than this idea that it has to look exactly this way, that supports us in releasing control, right? It supports us in letting go and trusting and staying connected to the feeling and letting that feeling guide the way. Letting that feeling be what you align with every single decision you make. It aligns with the feeling of my birth intention. Do I want my mother-in-law there? How do I feel in her presence? She makes me feel anxious. Okay, that does not align with my birth intention. Maybe that isn't the best person to have at my birth, right? Do I like this provider? When I go to appointments, I feel so relaxed. I feel supported. My questions are answered. This person feels like a good fit for me. Every single element, person, everything that we put together when we move into these next steps that I'll teach you in this training for creating your birth container and the birth environment, we want to do that deliberately. Not like, that sounds good and I heard this thing is helpful. Does this match with the birth intention as a feeling in my body? We want to connect to that feeling first. So I'd like to guide you all through a brief, it'll take about 5 minutes, guided meditation to get clear on what that feeling is for you. In my one-on-one coaching program, after we go through the meditation, we'll do a little bit of unpacking and exploration. So obviously I can't do that with you today, but I think this is still a really great place for all of you to begin in finding this. Because I might ask you, like, what is your birth intention? Or what are the things that bring you the feeling of like purpose? Why you're having this, for example, unmedicated birth? Moms might be like, I don't know. So I like to take my moms through a discovery process to help them uncover what those things are. This is one example of one of the discovery processes that I have specifically to help you find your birth intention. So without further ado, please close your eyes, get into a comfortable position, and take a few deep breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth. Inviting yourself to be fully present in the moment, right now. And if you notice your mind begin to wander, just bring your attention back to your breath, back to the present moment. And I invite you to begin by bringing your attention to the very top of your head. Where can you release tension here? Where can you relax? Where can you soften? Into your face, dropping your jaw, relaxing your ears, the back of your head and neck, relax your shoulders, your back and chest. Relax your arms, your hands and fingers. Relax your spine, your back, relax your pelvis, your belly, opening, softening your hips, legs, all the way down to your feet. Now, I invite you to imagine the birth of your dreams beyond any logistical limitation. You could be in a forest. You could be in a meadow, behind a waterfall, in a cozy cabin by a fire. Be there now. If you're a visual person, notice what you see. If you're more of a feeling person, notice how you feel. Look to your left. Look to your right. Look down to the ground. How do the sensations of the floor feel like under your feet? Do you feel the sun against your skin? Or is the moon out? Imagine you are in labor. Feel the feeling of love in your heart. Your love for your baby. The love of an ancestor, a partner, family member for you. Remembering in this moment that you are love. That your love for your baby, your oxytocin, is creating your contractions. Your love brings your baby down. You are free to move, to make sounds. You are held. You have everything you need. And I invite you to imagine that your baby is starting to crown, and you feel the pressure of your baby's head as they descend. And your body opens, and you feel no pain, only pressure. And on the next contraction, your baby's head and body emerge. And your baby is brought to your chest. And you did it. You just had the most beautiful birth possible. And your baby is safe. And you are safe. And you look down into their eyes for the first time. Your whole family is together. How do you feel in this moment? And I invite you to wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, and bring yourself back into the present moment here, back into the space with me, and open your eyes whenever you are ready. Yay, good job. So now we are going to move into step 2, which is selecting your external environment and care provider. So hopefully now you found the feeling of how you want to feel when your baby is in your arms. Maybe it was a feeling of peace, or maybe it was a feeling of excitement, like, wow, my baby's here, I'm amazing, I'm so proud of myself. If you can give it a name, name it. This is to help you advocate for that feeling being intact during your birth, to be deliberate about creating an environment and a team that aligns with your birth. Your birth environment and team is all about alignment. But we cannot create alignment unless we know what we are aligning with. As moms, we all want a peaceful birth or a positive birth, but there are so many different ways that can look, like I spoke about earlier. It could be joyful, it could be more serious. I do know a mom, I attended her birth as she wanted to play like silly music, and she had like Wet Pussy or something, whatever the song is called, like playing, and it was hilarious. And we were all like laughing, and that's like, really what she wanted. There was also a time about a year ago where I attended a birth. It was a cesarean birth, and the mom did not want a cesarean, but that ended up being the right choice for her. I knew as her doula that she wanted her birth to be a ceremony. So I told the surgeon, can you make this like a ceremony? Like, can you be reverent, act like you're in church, no small talk? He was like, sure. We talked to the nurses. They brought the altar items she brought to the hospital into the surgical room on the baby station where the baby would go. And they just created this ceremonial experience for her. And the obstetrician walked out of the surgical room and passed me when he was leaving, and he said, that was my first ceremonial C-section. So this mom didn't get what she wanted in the details for her birth, but she knew what she wanted. She was able to name it, identify it, and claim that by advocating and by telling people, this is how I want to feel while I'm bringing my baby into the world. And this is part of creating your external environment. No matter how things unfold, when we work to create an environment that really aligns with what it is that we want, we're more likely to have that feeling, that energy in the room while we're bringing our baby into the world, right? So it's about honoring what we want, voicing that to our team, and assessing for alignment. You might find that your provider feels really great, or your doula or your mother-in-law feels like a great person to be at your birth. And then later, something changes. And then suddenly when you're in their presence, you're not feeling really peaceful or safe or calm anymore. Maybe now they're giving you kind of some anxiety. And maybe it's time to change your mind and say, actually, never mind. There's no alignment anymore. So we want to consistently assess for alignment, to deliberately create a space and create a container where all the props and support tools and environment and the people that make up that space are in alignment with what you want for your birth. Alignment is about a feeling in your body. It's about feeling a feeling in your body and saying, yes, this matches. In the presence of this choice, I feel relaxed. I feel in alignment with my birth intention. In the presence of this person, I feel relaxed. I feel my birth intention intact. That's what alignment is. It's about connecting to your intuition and feeling that feeling in your body. Next, let's transition into talking about the external environment a little bit more, props and different things that make up that space. So your external environment is basically the space in which you're choosing to give birth. And there are many different models of care. There are many different places where you can give birth. You could give birth at home, a birth center, at a hospital. You could give birth in the woods with a midwife, maybe, There's lots of different places you can choose. Home births and out-of-hospital births are safe and evidence-based choices for low-risk moms. And it's actually very well researched that the midwifery model of care, which is an individualized model, meaning that care generally takes place in consideration of your preferences, considering your intuition and your unique history, is such an excellent option for moms to consider. Access is different for everybody. So some people can access midwives and some people can't. Midwives typically spend more time with you at appointments. They tailor recommendations specifically to you, and you are encouraged to be part of the decision-making process and encouraged to make informed choices in collaboration with your provider rather than just being told what to do, which is why moms have positive experiences. This is well researched that midwives produce positive birth experiences for moms. The midwifery model of care is associated with less pain medication use during labor, lower rates of interventions, lower rates of C-sections, forceps and vacuum, higher rates of intact perineum, higher breastfeeding success rates, and higher rates of satisfaction for parents. So if someone has an out-of-hospital birth, they're more likely to do it again, basically. And we've seen that in research. And this is research comparing low-risk moms in hospital, low-risk moms out of hospital. Also, research has shown that that model of care can significantly reduce racial disparities and improve Black maternal health outcomes. The studies that gave us this data were done, like I mentioned before, comparing the low risk and the low risk. So a lot of people think oh, home births have lower interventions because the high risk people go to the hospital. But the research I'm referring to is low risk in each category. And so through this research, we have found that out of hospital birth is safe, like I mentioned before, for low risk moms. And really it's just about choosing what feels right to you. So a lot of people are scared of home birth or scared of out of hospital birth in general because they just believe it's not safe because of societal conditioning. And that's really not true. The truth is that there are risks and benefits to both sides, and there's no wrong choice. It's just about choosing what will help you feel the safest. So this place becomes your external environment, and it significantly impacts how your labor unfolds, what kind of access to different tools that you have. And every hospital and birth center is also very, very different. So I think it's really important that we recognize that. If you wanted to birth at a hospital down the street and that one doesn't offer access to water birth, they don't do intermittent monitoring, maybe they have birth balls, but that's about it. And then maybe 20 minutes down the road is a midwifery-led hospital that has access to water birth. They have a walk-in shower, they have a TENS unit, they have birth balls and peanut balls. That's probably a much better option, right? Every hospital and every birth center is very different. So it's really important that you're asking the questions needed so you can go into birth feeling confident and prepared, knowing that you've done your homework and you've done everything that you needed to do to make sure that you're going into the best place In my coaching program, I have a discovery process for my students where they would go in and ask specific questions to identify where's the evidence practice gap here. And then we can create a customized advocacy plan to address that and help you navigate specifically where that gap is for your space. Traveling to get to a better hospital or a better birth center is worth it if you can, because your risk for having a C-section in a hospital that doesn't implement any evidence-based step to reduce C-section risk and wants everyone to birth on their back is going to be much more likely that you're going to get a C-section there than a hospital that doesn't do that, that implements evidence-based steps to reduce C-section. So doing this research is really important, and I highly recommend that everyone, instead of just going like, sure, I'm just going to be at this place, just like look and learn. I do also want to like acknowledge that some people have different access, and sometimes like within a 2-hour radius, that's the only hospital that you can go to. I do know moms who drove more than 2 hours to get to a better hospital, and that's something that might be harder to do if you already have kids and things like that. This mom was a first-time mom. But when we are birthing in an environment that is like a little bit more strict and we don't really have a lot of options, that's okay. We just have to educate ourselves better on how we're going to navigate the specific evidence practice gaps, the specific gaps in evidence, like they really want you to birth on your back. How we're going to advocate for that and have a plan around that to help support you in feeling safe and being able to make your preferences be intact and advocate in the moment, right? So one of the mamas in my coaching program had this really incredible birth, and I wanted to share her story. So she was the one to, if you go into the academy, you'll see her story under parent stories. And she's the one that said pushing didn't hurt. And she also birthed at a hospital 2 hours away, which I had mentioned, which is like super, super far. But because she was willing to travel to get to a provider that gave her more personalized care, she just had a much more positive experience. And she said the hospital that was closer to her, her care was so horrible there. And for her, she was like, it's worth it. Traveling, it's worth it. But it really just depends on you and where you are. There's another mama in the parent stories. You can go and read her story. And she was saying that she had like this really sweet, I think it was like tranquil. That was the word she used. It was like tranquil birth experience in the hospital. She said, I thought it was going to be really sterile and there would be like, it was cold, like a bunch of people, you know. She said, I brought my baby into the world in an environment with so much love. It felt so loving and so supportive. And so she knew how to work within her hospital because she wasn't going anywhere else. That was the one that like worked for her. And she learned how to create an environment that was really loving and supportive. Her story is really cool. I recommend going and checking it out. Okay, so next is step 3, which is curating your sensory space and physical tools. So we want to find a space that gives you access to evidence-based options as much as we can for monitoring in labor and coping with labor. In the hospital bed is kind of like center stage. So some moms might not want to be in the bed, but they don't know what else they can do if they don't want to be on the bed. It might feel like there aren't a lot of options in that space. But some moms want to be on the floor. So in that case, floor mats can be really great. Some moms want to be in the tub. Some moms want to be on the ball. So having access to lots of different ways to move your body is really important. Some birth centers, I see one of my moms here in my coaching program, she's birthing at a birth center that has a rope that you can hang from. You can like squat and like hang from it and sway. It's really awesome. So especially if you're wanting to have an unmedicated birth, we want more props and more options, not less. So if you're planning to birth in a hospital, I recommend when you get to the hospital, ask for a squat bar, a peanut ball, and a birth ball. It's also great if you have access to a rebozo, which is a scarf from Mexican midwifery. And if you're in my coaching program, that's something you'll learn about how to use to optimize coping with labor and optimal fetal positioning. A TENS unit, a birth ball, massage oil, these are all great things to have as well. Props for labor are great when they support you in upright positions and support you in relaxing in between contractions. Those are the two best like pieces, I would say, like the best parts of having a support tool, like a big prop, like a birth ball or a bolster or a rebozo, a peanut ball. If you're having a contraction, leaning over your partner, rocking back and forth, like that's really great, like standing up. And maybe in between the contraction, you want to relax a little bit more. You don't want to just keep standing. And you can lean over your partner or your doula if you're kind of like swaying with them, but they can't like help your body relax as well as a birth ball on the bed can. If we put a birth ball on the bed, you can go to the birth ball and you can do this and relax and sway back and forth. And that can help you relax in between the contractions. So that's a really, really great use for props. The peanut ball is the same. It can support you in lots of different positions in the hospital bed or in any bed, especially in the hospital bed. Some of my favorites are side lying. So you can lie on your side and rest with your leg up on the peanut ball. And this can just really open the pelvis and support baby in going a little bit lower in the pelvis. There's also something called the fire hydrant. It's where you're in your hands and knees, and one of your legs is propped up on the peanut ball. So if you could imagine you're in hands and knees, the peanut ball is right next to you, and you lift one leg on top of the peanut ball. It's kind of like you're lifting your leg like a dog would to pee on a fire hydrant. This opens the pelvis asymmetrically. So we're taking the pelvis from here to here by lifting one leg up. And asymmetry is a great way to support your baby in being in an optimal position and move through the pelvis smoothly, because you're creating in your pelvis a little more space on this side, a little more space on that side, so they can kind of wiggle their way through. This is great if we're trying to support progress, if there's a stall or anything like that during labor. We also want to have a lot of different props in our external environment to support your body and getting in lots of different positions to support you in being upright, because upright positions are really helpful for labor progress and reducing the risk for tearing. Next, I want to talk about the senses. So we have touch, taste, sound, smell, and sight. Touch, taste, sound, smell. Yep, that's 5. We want to think about what all those things are going to be doing in the birth space, how we can support all of your senses to just create that environment of love and connection and safety. Because it's through love and connection and safety feelings that you can support labor progress, that you release oxytocin. So let's first talk about touch. There are people who really love touch, and when you touch them, they feel safe. There are other people that, like, their nervous system gets overwhelmed with a lot of touch. You could be a really touchy-feely person and go in labor and be like, no one touch me. So we can never know exactly how you're going to feel. But massage oil is something, that is really great to have in the birth space, because then we can help like massage your body, release tension, and that touch can feel really helpful. There are many different cultures around the world where they specifically use different kinds of oils and massage the mom the whole time going through labor. So with your support people, I recommend going through each one of the senses and creating a plan for all those things that you like. How do you like to be touched? What do you not like? And next is taste. So considering cultural or ethnic foods that are comforting to you, and any kind of food that helps you feel safe and happy, are great foods to have during labor. Foods that your body really like. Also, we want to think about smell. We do have evidence that certain essential oils can decrease pain scores during labor and also decrease anxiety, which is really cool. So smell is important, and we can build associations with smell. Like, whenever you smell a thing, it makes you feel this way. So every time if you go to have sex and you put on like lavender essential oil or like self-pleasure, you're entering that space hormonally where we are in that relaxed and released state. Birth is very similar to orgasm. So we want to think about how can I create the association? How can I create the space that mimics the same space I would be in for orgasm, right? Because the same hormones are working. So even during orgasm or during sex, you could diffuse lavender essential oils and then have that association of I'm in this ooey gooey, so safe space. When I smell this thing, that's where I release control, right? It's just a great way to build association. So smells like peppermint also can help with nausea. If you hire a doula, they'll probably bring, many doulas know, some aromatherapy, and sometimes they'll even bring some of those to your space. So it's also important to recognize that you could be really sensitive to smell. So bring the smells in, but you might change your mind and hate them. So we want to just start really low and slow with essential oils, just one drop. You don't want to put it on your body because then you'll have to get it off, and that can be kind of hard. So instead, just have it in the room. If you hate it, then we can turn it off. The next is sound. So think about music. Anything that helps you feel safe, anything that helps you release control and surrender and relax. Prayerful music, spiritual music, spa music, things like that. Or you could do silly music if you're the kind of person that laughter and humor just really helps you relax. Affirmations are also great, but affirmations are better if we practice them in pregnancy. So if someone in your labor just says, your body knows how to do this, you might be like, okay, cool, thanks. But that might not really mean that much to you. So instead, building associations with affirmations, which means we practice writing the affirmation, hearing about the affirmation, having a conversation about the affirmation. What else can we do? Seeing it, you could make affirmation artwork or get cards and you can see it around your space. All of that can help you build an association when you are doing the writing and listening to them, when you're looking at it, reading, whatever. You are feeling your birth intention in your body. That's what builds the pathway of association. When I hear this affirmation, I feel relaxed and safe. Or when I hear this affirmation, I feel my birth intention. That makes the affirmation so much more effective when we actually hear it during labor. So the next is sight. So you could bring altar items, Things that, like, when you have them set up and you see them, they remind you that your ancestors are with you. They remind you that your body can do this. They remind you that you are a part of nature, that nature is perfect. They remind you of your spirituality and anything that's important to you. And to be honest, you probably won't even look at them. But I still think it's great to have that because it's an altar holds the energy of the space. So it's like we're bringing in some intention and we're bringing in these symbols that mean something to you. And even if you like don't see them, you know that you're there, that they're there. And the energy of those items are present in your space. Sometimes moms will like put affirmation cards like all around the house, and if they're having a home birth, and put it up by the birth tub. And honestly, I feel like I'm just like, every time I do that, all three of my home births, I'm just like not looking at them. But other people look at them. And that's really cool because other people will look at them and then they will say what they see to you. They'll be like reading them, and you could be like having a contraction, and then dad is like, you know, reading along all the ones that you love. And it's like, oh, I love these. I picked them out. They're really special to me. And it makes it a little bit easier for partners to know exactly what to say to you. So you have oxytocin, right? Which is a love hormone, which is created through feelings of safety, connection, and love. And then when your body has a contraction, your body goes, okay, we're going to give you the perfect amount of endorphins to match the intensity of this sensation. And so we have this perfect feedback loop woven into place throughout birth. And with all these happy hormones, the oxytocin giving you the feeling of love, the endorphins giving the feeling of euphoria, I would really like to argue that birth offers the highest possible experience of love and joy and bliss that is possible in the human experience. All those hormones you're getting, your baby is getting too. So the feelings that you're getting, your baby is also getting. Birth can be one of the most beautiful experiences of your life. What can get in the way is stress hormones. And stress hormones come from an internal environment or an external environment that is causing you fear, anxiety, or stress. Struggle with releasing control, having a difficult time with pain, having a difficult time being vulnerable. All of that can create an inner rigidness and restriction that can create stress and block progress and make it harder for you to relax and harder for you to work with your contractions. Same with disruptions. So lots of people trying to come in, students wanting to check on you, wanting to do lots of cervical exams, sometimes having lots of people just around. Interventions that can feel like really supportive, and other times having lots of people around, lots of interventions does not feel very supportive. So some people are like, leave me alone, like me. Other people are like, yes, like I want all that stuff, you know? So there's no wrong way. Everyone is different. It's about knowing yourself and honoring who you are and accepting who you are, accepting what you believe, what works for you and what doesn't work for you, and knowing that what makes you feel safe and what doesn't make you feel safe is one of the best things to be aware of and honor in ourselves so that we really can create a space internally and externally that supports what we want. Because if you feel I'm going to be disrupted a lot, and people are going to check on me, and they're going to check my cervix, and students and people I don't know, it's going to freak me out. Good to know. We want to know that beforehand. Okay, let's create a birth plan that uses language to keep the power in your hands and reduces disruption. In my coaching program, this is something that you'll learn so you can really reduce the amount, even in a hospital system, even in a place where there are lots of interventions, where there's lots of checking and disruption, we can still limit it significantly if you have the education on how to do that. But it's just important that we understand that about ourselves and we're willing to honor that in ourselves. Step 4, building an aligned birth team. So next we're going to talk about your team. Your team consists of the people who are going to be at your birth. And I invite you to only have the people at your birth who really make you feel good. That's so important. You don't owe anyone anything. Your birth is not a free-for-all. It's not something that we need to give to anyone else. We don't owe anyone getting to be present for our birth. It's important that we're making choices around what is best for you. You deserve to be at the center of this experience, the center. You deserve all the support that you need so that you can feel totally safe and letting go, focusing on birthing your baby and getting all the support, right? So let's talk about how to relax. There is a story I once heard of a mom who was like shaking her hips with one leg up, and she was kind of like twerking, and she had fluid coming out of her body. And she was like, had this moment where she was like, oh my God, I'm so glad that I chose the team that I did, because these are the only people that I would be able to do this around, right? I was listening to that story and I was like, wow, that really is the foundation for like when or who we want to have at our birth. So I'm not saying that you're going to be like naked twerking with fluid coming out of your body. A lot of the time we're not that exposed during birth, but like sometimes things like that can happen. So I just want you to think like, can I do that in front of these people? The best thing to get your baby out that you can do, or the best way to get your baby out naturally, is to do whatever comes naturally for you. And we need to let go and allow that to happen. We need to feel the permission to do whatever comes naturally for us in the presence of the people that we've chosen to be there for our birth. And this comes down to releasing control. You can't control if you have to make really loud sounds. You know, if you have to move your body this way or that. I was a doula for a mom recently who was just shaking. Like she just was like shaking her thighs, shaking her booty, shake, 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 shake. And she just had to shake. And that's what she needed to do. And some moms might be like, I feel kind of weird. Like I'm sitting here like wiggling in like a Frida Mom disposable diaper and like no shirt on. Usually we forget. We don't even notice like when we're in labor, but it still is important that we feel safe to do whatever we need to do around the people that we've chosen. So we don't have control over like the assistant midwife, over the nurse, but we can, especially with the nurse, request a new nurse, which is really awesome. And I recommend that everyone interview their nurse when you first get to the hospital. So you can say like, hey nurse, like I would not actually have you do it. I would have partner or doula do it and say like, this is my name. Here's the birth plan. What do you think about the birth plan? Can you support us with this? And if the nurse is like, I don't like supporting upright birth or something like that, I would say, okay, thanks for letting us know. And then we can go to charge nurse and say, hello, charge nurse. It doesn't feel like it's going to be a good fit for us. Could we please have a different nurse? Thank you. And that's totally okay. You know, it's completely okay to ask for a new person. You can also be vulnerable and say, it's really important that we give birth in an upright position, and that matters so much to us. Our doctor isn't supporting that, or our nurse isn't supporting that. Is there anyone that you think would be more supportive who could be on our team? We want the nurse to be someone who is on your team for advocacy, not someone you have to advocate against. Next, let's talk about a doula. So evidence has found that doulas are more supportive. So outcomes are better compared to just having a family member or a friend who isn't like trained. So doulas are the most supportive person you can have for your birth that isn't a medical professional. And we have found through research that they do improve outcomes. So some people do not have access to a doula because they're too expensive. Sometimes you can fundraise, you can like request people pay for your birth education for a doula instead of like buying baby gifts. So sometimes there are ways to be creative. But some people are like, do I want to do birth education or do I want a doula? And both are so great. So I'll just kind of give you like a quick illustration of the difference. A doula runs alongside you during a marathon. Birth coaching supports you in preparing for the marathon, and then postpartum coaching catches you after the marathon, if that kind of makes sense. So I think that's kind of a good way of illustrating it. A lot of people think if I get a doula, I don't need to take a birth class or I don't need birth education, but that's not true. Doulas are there to give you education on specifically like your unique situation with your provider, with your doula, some tips and tricks, how to like clarifying their role for your birth, not a full comprehensive birth preparation curriculum, if that makes sense. So, okay, let's see. I think that's enough on a doula. Let's go to step 5, which would be mastering self-advocacy and communication. So first, let's talk about advocacy and my approach to advocacy. My students who use this approach to advocacy have outcomes 9 times better than the national average when it comes to avoiding C-section, tearing, and epidurals. And that is because we're following these 3 steps to make sure that we know how to advocate and reduce our risk for unwanted intervention. So this has been proven over several hundreds or through several hundreds of families using it. So first I'll say there are risks, benefits, and alternatives, which means we are looking at what the information has to say. And we understand what the evidence has to say for all of your options. This is totally crucial for you being able to avoid unwanted interventions and have a positive birth experience. Because if someone were to go over to you and say, hey, I think your labor is taking a while, we should give you Pitocin to speed it up. It's like, okay, cool. I know the evidence-based length of labor. So if you're telling me there's a problem, like I can kind of identify on my own if this is coming from a let's say a time-oriented, like a convenience-oriented, profit-oriented policy, or if this is actually coming from evidence. In the 1950s, Dr. Friedman performed non-consensual cervical exams to 500 white women in a hospital in Boston. And then he was like, this is how everyone should be dilating in labor. I've developed a curve, a labor curve. And the whole world was like, okay, we agree with you, and followed this curve. This is why, like, the majority of cesareans in the United States are due to failure to progress because moms were taking too long to dilate in labor. New guidelines in 2014 by ACOG were released saying that we actually have more time to labor than the Friedman's curve. And there are so many reasons why the Friedman's curve doesn't apply to our full population. So new research came out, we updated guidelines, and then research came out after that and said, hey, apparently half of doctors in the United States are still diagnosing failure to progress based on the Friedman's curve rather than the updated 2014 guidelines. So this is one example of the evidence practice gap. We can protect ourselves from being a victim to non-evidence-based policies or outdated policies like making choices for us or pushing us into a corner if we have the education, right, on what the evidence has to say. Also, we want to understand the risk, benefits, and alternatives. So if a provider comes in and they're like, hey, I think we should speed up your labor with Pitocin, you can say, okay, well, I understand the risks and benefits of Pitocin, and I know that there are alternatives too. Could I try to do a breast pump instead? Is there a problem with the baby's position? Could we look at baby's position and maybe try to correct it? Maybe I could get in the shower with my partner, skin to skin, and release more of my own oxytocin and feel safe and not be bothered for a little bit, right? There are alternatives. It's not sometimes a provider will give you all that information in the moment, and sometimes they won't. As a birth doula, one time I attended a birth where the doctor said, I think you need Pitocin to speed up your labor. And the mom said, are there any risks to Pitocin? And he said, no, not really. It's your same oxytocin. That's not true. So, we want to just know this stuff beforehand. And we want to understand what our options are. So if someone says hey, I think your baby's a little stuck, let's use forceps to get your baby out. You don't want to be like, what's forceps? We want to know about that beforehand. You want to understand what alternatives are and what risks and benefits are so you can make an informed choice. The next is to make an informed choice in alignment with what feels right to you. So we need step 2, which is to have tools to make choices from love rather than fear. I know a mom who was told at the end of her pregnancy, your baby is too big. You might have to get a cesarean because your baby's getting too big. And she was like, oh my God, what do I do? And the doctor was like, well, we could just induce you. Now, if we induce you now, we could probably get your baby out before they get too big. But if you keep being pregnant, she was 39 weeks as a first-time mom. If you keep staying pregnant, we're probably going to have to do a C-section. This mom was terrified of a C-section. She said, I'll do it. I'll totally do it, right? So what this mom ended up doing was choosing to do the induction, and then she ended up having a cesarean due to induction complications. So this poor mom was so afraid of having a cesarean that she made choices thinking about and feeling the thing that she wanted to avoid, rather than choosing, well, what feels right to me? What does the evidence have to say? Being more deliberate and responsible in our choices means that we choose to honor our intuition. And a lot of people just don't know how to do that, and that's okay. But I found that we can really improve our experiences and we can be more deliberate in our choices when we're choosing in alignment with love rather than choosing from fear. The next is to have communication tools. You can be confident in your choices. You can understand the information. It doesn't matter though if you don't know how to apply that in the moment. So we want to know how to actually communicate with care providers in a way that supports our preferences and being intact. And there are specific things that you say for each kind of situation that can come up. A provider says that you're needing to get on your back for pushing. This is exactly what you do. If someone says we need to break your water to speed up your labor, this is exactly what we do. There's different communication tools for each one of those situations. A lot of moms will say my husband's super confident and he's going to be able to advocate for me. And that's great. We have the confidence piece. We need all 3 steps though. So we need the education, the confidence, and we also need to know what we say, what we ask, what kind of language to use. There are different forms of language that we need to know how to understand, and we need to know how to facilitate in conversation. For example, if a provider were to say, I think your baby's heart rate is going down a little bit. I'm a little bit worried about it. Maybe it's concerning, maybe not. The thing about continuous monitoring, where we monitor all throughout labor, is that the baby's heart rate can sometimes go through normal variation, normal variability from 110 to 160, where the heart rate just moves and changes a little bit with contractions. And a provider can look at it and say, that looks concerning. Another provider can look at it and say, that looks totally normal. There are many shades of gray in obstetrics, and this is why continuous monitoring increases your risk for a cesarean without improving outcomes for babies, because we're looking at everything and we might interpret something that's normal as concerning. So I just had a mom in my coaching program a few weeks ago avoid a cesarean because she knew how to communicate in the moment. And they said to her, your baby's heart rate is a little concerning. This was a midwife in a hospital. I think that maybe we should talk about cesarean. Maybe we should transfer you to the OB. And she was like, what are my alternatives, right? And first, let's explore that. And she knew how to have that conversation. She understood how to use the language around, is the heart rate reassuring? Are you not reassured, or are you just not sure? Is this an emergency, or do we have time to work on this, right? So she had this conversation with those tools that she learned in my coaching program. She explored the alternatives. There are many alternatives actually that you can use to try to get the baby's heart rate back up if we were to be concerned about the heart rate issue without having to jump to a C-section. And she had a vaginal birth because she knew how to advocate in the moment, which is huge. So that is a 3-step process that I teach. So the free birth breakthrough session is a free one-on-one session with me. It'll take about an hour. Well, I will help you to clarify what are the steps needed for you to go into birth feeling confident and prepared, and creating more of a customized plan for you rather than us just kind of piecing things together and trying to figure it out on our own, figuring out where are the gaps, what are the things that we need to focus on for you to go into birth feeling confident and prepared, and also to explore if my coaching program would be a good fit for you.